The BMW S55 engine has proven itself to be a monster in regards to its power potential and tuning capability, whilst garnering a reputation of durability and reliability over time. However, in good old BMW tradition, the S55 has one Achilles heel, which is the crank hub. The factory crank hub design is flawed, as both the cam sprocket and oil pump sprocket are two separate pieces held together by a friction disc as well as a large stretch bolt. Under high power and torque loads, as well as oscillations from the car's crankshaft, the sprockets on the hub are prone to spinning independently of one another, which can cause the motor to go out of time. In many scenarios, the motor may need just a simple retiming, or in a worst case scenario, given that the S55 is of the interference kind, valves may come into contact with the pistons, which may require a full rebuild or engine replacement. Which brings us to SSR Performance in Orange County, California. SSR reached out to me in regards to upgrading the crank hub on my own BMW F82 M4 with the maximum PSI kit, which they have made a few revisions to, improving upon the original. This upgraded unit is now a two-piece keyed design that eliminates the OEM friction washer, in addition to 4 pins that connect to the end of the crankshaft to ensure there's no spinning of the hub, and that the sprockets stay in place no matter how much power is thrown at the engine. Follow along as I film the install from start to finish, and make sure to stick around for an exclusive discount on your crank hub upgrades through SSR if you watch this video. Please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact SSR Performance. All their info will be in the description box down below. As many of you know, the S55 crank hub upgrade is a very labor intensive process, and to start off the install, you're going to want to take off your carbon fiber strut tower brace, you're going to want to take off your charge pipes, you're going to want to remove the factory or aftermarket intake system that you may have on the car, and then from there you're going to want to work your way towards the valve cover. The top mounted liquid air coolers are usually going to stay on the car, but you still do need to disconnect them and just move them off to the side. And in order to access the valve cover, you're going to want to get to the fuel rail, which you're going to need to take off as well to get to those valve cover bolts to essentially pull it all off. So that involves the first portion of the install. So Rick, who is the tech that was working on my car, as you can see here, is basically loosening up and removing any bolts that hold in the fuel rail into place. Now this is a high pressure fuel system, so at idle sits at about 800 psi all the way up to 2000 psi under load, so it's something that you have to be very careful with. It's recommended to have a towel as well because there is a lot of fuel in there under a lot of pressure. As you can see, the valve cover has now been removed off the engine and is coming off. You can also see the valve cover gasket as well that is taken out as part of the process. Throughout the crank hub job itself, there are a number of other preventative maintenance services that are knocked out while everything is taken off. This includes the valve cover gasket, the oil pan gasket, the engine oil, a full coolant flush, the front crank seal, as well as spark plugs, which is an optional service that you can get done as well.
Pretty much a specialty timing tool that allows you to time the S55 engine. So this is like a tool that you would have like in the regular technician's toolbox.
Right.
It's specifically meant to time this engine.
Gotcha.
So that's why when we say you should go to an installer who's experienced, it's because they would have this tool in their box pretty much.
Gotcha. So do you have a special announcement for viewers on my channel specifically that want to get their crank hub done?
Yeah, man. So for anyone that watches your video and decides that doing the crank hub is the right job for them, we will go ahead and offer 10% off to anyone who watches this video, and you can shoot a huge thank you to the guy behind the camera, Omar.
Appreciate
for making
that.
this happen. You know, we want to take care of you guys. We want to take care of Omar's viewers, and just offer you 10% off on the job. Just make sure that when you call in to get it scheduled or to drop your deposit off, you mention Simply Car Things. So just make sure to mention Simply Car Things. We'll make sure we get you hooked up with that 10% off discount. And this applies for only the customers that are actually coming in to SSR Performance to get the product installed. If you're someone that's watching that's not local to us here in Orange County, California, you can actually just go ahead and order on our website, and we have like a year-round sale going on for that. So there's not much we can do to play around with the numbers there, but definitely for the guys that come into our shop, we'd love to take care of you guys. Thank you.
Here our spark plugs come out.
This part of the job isn't necessary, but I like to do it because number one, it's easier to turn the crank over.
Right.
And number two, we could visually see how the engine is running.
Gotcha. So right here, what are you doing exactly with the...
I set it close to where it would be top dead center.
Right.
That way when I go to put in the lock pin into the crankshaft, I just got to turn it over a little bit instead of trying to turn and trying to find it.
Okay.
And right here, I'm just removing these hoses.
Okay.
Coolant hoses off the clips.
Gotcha.
Pretty much preparing it so I can remove the fan.
Okay. As you can see, the valve cover is removed and timing has now been checked. So the next step would be to get under the car basically to access the subframe as well as the oil pan, which both of those need to be removed. But before doing that, as you can see, the tech is inserting his mounting point for the support bar, because this is necessary in order to hold the motor in place while the subframe is being dropped, as well as the oil pan itself. Now that the car is up on the lift and you have access to the underside, there are a number of fender liner components, under trays, skid plates, and protective coverings that will need to be removed in order to gain access to the subframe as well as the oil pan. The electronic steering rack is also going to need to be disconnected, along with the removal of the sway bar, motor mounts, and control arms.
Lock the steering wheel in place because they have a clock spring. And if you don't lock it in place, if it turns on its own, sometimes they turn on its own, and then you rip that clock spring and then you get all types of codes.
Man, that would suck. Yeah, okay. That's why you put the seatbelt through the steering wheel, right? Now that the electronic power steering rack has been taken out, the engine oil does need to be removed out of the oil pan, of course, prior to dropping the pan itself. And while doing that, it's also a good time to disconnect many of the coolant lines and hoses that connect to the multiple heat exchangers on the lower front end of the engine bay to drain the coolant as well. Pretty much all the bolts are out, right?
Already off.
And now the subframe finally is able to come down. There are a lot of bolts, covers, dust covers, skid plates, coolant lines, sensors, all kinds of things that you have to remove in order just to get access to the subframe and then to take out all the bolts. And now we can move towards removing the oil pan itself, and again there are a crap ton of bolts, all of which are one-time use and need to be replaced as part of the process.
Damn. There goes the oil pan and our gasket right there.
You can see the crank up from here, right up in there. That's your
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
that's your timing chain
Yep.
for your camshaft.
Yep.
And then the other one's for your
The
oil.
oil pump.
So now that that dust cover was removed, the tech can basically insert that metal pin into the flywheel, which allows him to mark the top dead center of the crankshaft, which is good for timing as well as adjusting the crank bolt itself.
This is for the removal of the fan.
Yeah, that's to remove the fan. So you have this cover here.
Okay.
Technically, you're supposed to remove this when the subframe is in, but I just find it easier to do it after.
Afterwards.
And you got this for the auxiliary pump. And 2 more bolts to hold the fan down.
Gotcha.
Right here also has to come out,
Okay.
which is, I don't know if you can see.
Oh yeah, the connection right there. Okay.
And that's going to be,
Fine.
so you can get the fan out way easier. On the front turbo, there's this inlet that you have to remove in order to get the fan out.
Right.
My best bet is just with the swivel. Get up in there, get those 10 millimeter
Okay.
nuts right out. Some people, they
That's on
squeeze the fan past it.
It's hard to do.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
'Cause as these vehicle ages, they're gonna, the plastic, you know.
They get
gets
brittle. Yeah.
And I don't want to break it.
Yeah.
Now that the metal lock pin has been inserted into the flywheel, the tech can now use the BMW specific camshaft timing tool to set the cams and lock them in place. Now the removal of the timing chain tensioner can begin. The timing chain tensioner is hydraulic, so the tech has placed a plastic Ziploc bag to just collect any leaking oil to prevent a mess being made inside the engine bay. And that device holds the timing chain with a great amount of tension so that it doesn't slap around inside the engine itself, which could cause a skip in timing.
Just the one bolt, or is there another on?
It's just
Okay.
one hole. And you see it's got little holes?
Yeah.
So oil pressure goes in there and it holds this piston out as well. So if I push it right now, there's going to be a lot of oil
Well, that's gonna squirt out.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have that tensioner out. We can go ahead and remove our sprockets.
And now the removal of the Vanos components and Vanos gears can begin.
These bolts are also stretch bolts.
Okay.
So every bolt that we, take out, like
Right.
these, a crank bolt, the oil pan bolts, anything that's a stretch bolt, we always have to replace.
Gotcha.
Technically, you
So
could reuse it, but
Why risk it?
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
so cheap, and
Yeah.
why even risk it?
So most of this is like one-time use hardware.
Yes. A little tricky, but
Yeah. See that? Nice.
Now that the radiator fan has been taken out from the top of the engine bay, the water pump drive belt can be removed as well, which is held on by 4 bolts. And once that's taken out, the removal of the crank pulley can begin as well, which is held on by 8 bolts.
Oh, there it is, yep.
This pulley, the crank pulley, is held on by 8 bolts.
Okay.
So just remove all of them and comes right out. To get the last one out, make sure you hold it in, because if not, if it goes down and it hits the radiator, you're going to put a big hole in the radiator. Right out.
Wow. Is that heavy?
It's a little heavy.
Oh, damn. I didn't realize. Dang. Because when you said hole in the radiator, I was like, damn, that thing has to be pretty heavy then.
The whole cartridge slides up.
Oh, nice.
Again, some people remove the vanos solenoids. That's them right here.
Okay.
To get the complete cartridge out. I just zip tie out of the way. As long as it's out of the way from me, it's good enough.
Gotcha.
The belt tensioner also has to come out.
Okay.
Since we're gonna remove the lower oil pump cartridge,
Yes.
there's this cover right here that we have to remove.
Oh, there you go.
You just gotta be really careful not to damage that surface.
Yeah. Wow.
So right here what I'm doing is I'm pushing the tensioner back in. That way I could lock it in.
Okay.
Moving the oil pump sprocket.
Okay.
This whole cartridge, you'll see in a minute, is gonna come out completely. More bolts up on top on the tensioner itself.
Okay.
And then we can loosen up the crank hub.
Wow.
And once the crank hub is out, then the cartridge comes out, and then we'll get to the drilling.
Okay.
With the oil pump sprocket and lower oil pump cartridge being removed, the crankshaft counterhold tool can now be set in place, and the main crank hub bolts can start to be loosened and removed completely. Following that, you can see the removal of the crank hub has now occurred, and the cam sprocket and oil pump sprockets are taken out as well.
Oil pump sprocket.
Yeah, so oil pump.
And then our timing chain. Gotcha.
So eventually what happens is it spins just a little bit.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's enough to just bend your valves and that's it.
Yeah.
Minimum you gotta do the head
job, yeah.
First just be safe now and call it done.
Yeah, exactly. Have the peace of mind.
The only thing that holds it onto the crank are those little dimples. And this is just a washer.
Wow.
That's it.
So if that somehow like moves slightly out of place.
Slightly, this always breaks.
Yeah.
From the ones I've seen spin, they break apart.
It's flimsy. I mean, you could bend it with your fingers, honestly. Yeah.
So in reality, the only thing holding your hub, your cam timing to the crankshaft is just this bolt, the pressure of the bolt.
That's scary.
The holes on here, they're slightly smaller than the drill bit we provide.
Right.
And that's for the reason that it's gonna self-align, because if we give you if we drill this out to the size of the drill bit, it's gonna be off a little bit.
Right.
So like this, how it's slightly smaller, when you start drilling, it's straightening itself out, and then that's gonna give you the most accurate, drilling process.
Yeah. Okay.
We just go ahead and bolt that in.
Okay.
I like to place it in a position where I can see all 4 holes.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Now the drilling process has begun, and this is required in order for the oil pump sprocket to pin itself into the crankshaft. The holes themselves are actually very small, and the provided guide tool and drill bit help to enable a very accurate drilling process of the crankshaft itself. The upgraded crank hub isn't installed just yet. This is actually just a test fit to make sure that everything is seated correctly before reinstalling the timing chain and the lower oil pump cartridge. Just doing a quick inspection or overview.
Yeah.
Make sure everything looks good.
Right before everything goes back in.
Yep.
Gotta be nice and clean, you know?
Yeah, that's a huge deal. Now the reinsertion of the lower oil pump cartridge and timing chain can begin, and then the actual maximum PSI crank hub can be installed. You also want to make sure that a preliminary inspection is done, just to make sure that the area is free of any metal debris and is very clean. So as you can see, there is our oil pump sprocket for the second piece of that upgraded crank hub, and it slides into those little holes that we drilled, the 4 pins in there, as you might be able to tell. And now Rick is just going to go ahead and reinsert the rest of the crank hub, the upgraded one, which also includes the timing chain sprocket as well, and then realign the timing chain onto the sprockets as well, as you can see right up there. You can also see those little keys right there where the indentations or grooves are on the crank hub. I know my camera isn't focusing too well, but that is also part of how this crank hub stays locked into place, is through that keyed design. So essentially there's no way that the 2 sprockets can spin independently of one another, which would cause the motor to go out of time.
The crank hub is actually already torqued down.
Awesome.
So that's already torqued down. I already have the cartridge torqued down. Now
Perfect.
Just gotta tighten up, torque this one down to spec, the tensioner up on top, down to spec, and then we can move on to timing.
Awesome. So the crank hub is fully in now, right?
The crank hub is in, but we still got to do timing.
Right, okay.
And timing, and then 1,000 other pieces there.
Yeah, exactly. So what comes next? Is next the timing procedure, or is it?
Next, what I do, I put on the subframe. Next, I put on the subframe, get it just semi-situated. That way I can take off the short brace, move on to my timing. And then once timing checks out, then everything else goes back on.
Awesome.
Valve cover, fuel rail,
okay.
all that good stuff.
All that stuff, okay. Now that the oil pan as well as the subframe have been reinstalled, the Vanos gears have gone into place as well. Timing is now ready to be set. The tech has inserted a tool that mimics the function of the timing chain tensioner at full operating pressure. There you have it. Timing has basically been set, the valve cover has now been reinserted with the new gasket, the oil pan has been reinserted, the subframe is back on, and once everything checks out, the rest of this process is just a matter of reassembly, and there is a lot of reassembling to do, which we will fast forward over quite a bit.
Are you just inspecting the valve cover?
Yeah, once I torque it down,
Yeah.
before I call it done, then I like to go back and check, make sure the gasket didn't roll.
Right.
Because on these valve covers, it's really easy for them to...
So it won't seal right if it rolls?
Yeah, if it rolls, usually it likes to roll up in the back. And what happens, there's just a bunch of oil that starts to dump right onto your downpipes.
Ooh, yeah.
And
that just burns off.
If you plan on tuning your S55 engine, running E85 or anything basically that's more power than stock, it's highly recommended to upgrade your spark plugs or at least replace them. I went with some upgraded NGK spark plugs, gap to 0.022, and then had those reinserted into the engine since I do plan on tuning very soon here. And now that the plugs have been reinserted and the fuel rail is back on the car, the coolant bleeding and refill procedure can begin.
And that looks tasty.
yeah, it's really sweet.
Looks like Gatorade.
Animals love this stuff.
Oh, I bet.
So crank hub's in, timing set, everything up top is done, charge pipes are in, all the hoses are on, coolant's in, oil's in. So pretty much we're ready to start it, make sure everything's good, 100%, and then once we're ready, we're gonna go ahead and snap everything else back on, all the under trays and, you know, little bits.
Awesome.
So now, everything's done, I'm ready to start her up. You know?
Sweet, here it goes. Detected, beautiful. Woo. I'm excited.
And there you have it. Crank hub is installed, no fault codes, car starts just fine, wheels and tires are mounted on the car. All that's left to do at this point is just go for a quick test drive. That's going to do it for today's video, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you have not done so already. I put so much work into making this video happen for you guys. This is a world's first on the crank hub install. Make sure to contact SSR Performance for any of your crank hub needs. You guys will also get the exclusive 10% off discount as well if you mention my channel name. And now we're finally ready to have some real fun with this car, and I cannot wait to share with you guys what's in store next. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Take it easy.